So, what happens when a police chief breaks down in tears at a press conference and it just ignites a national firestorm? Today, we're unpacking a Fox News panel's reaction to this exact incident in Portland. We're going to explore how one emotional moment spiraled into this huge debate about crime, leadership, and even border security.
And this one quote from a commentator, it gets right to the heart of the whole thing. It pretty much frames the entire debate around this single idea, that the police chief's tears, well, they weren't a sign of empathy, they were a sign of weakness.
All right, so how did we even get here? It all started with this one incident out in Portland, Oregon. You had federal agents carrying out what the Justice Department called a targeted arrest, and it ended with them shooting a Venezuelan man who was allegedly tied to a pretty notorious gang.
Now, according to the official federal complaint, the situation went from 0 to 60 fast. The suspect apparently put his car in reverse, slams into a Border Patrol vehicle, drives forward, and then does it again, ramming the vehicle multiple times. This sequence of events is absolutely crucial because it became the official justification for why the agents used deadly force.
And here it is. This is the moment that lit the match. At a press conference, Portland's police chief gets emotional and he explains why he was hesitant to even mention the suspect's alleged gang connections. And his reason? He said he was worried about, quote, the historic injustice of victim blaming.
So, how did the panel take that? Well, let's just say they didn't see it as some nuanced take on a complex issue. For them, this was a clear, unmistakable, fundamental failure of leadership.
For the commentators, it really all came down to this one point. They argued that the chief was crying for the alleged criminal, not for the federal agents who were just attacked, and not for the public they're supposed to protect. From their perspective, his priorities were completely backwards.
This next quote really just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? It frames the chief's actions as a deliberate choice. He's showing empathy for the alleged criminal, not for the community he's actually sworn to protect.
And this is where you see the huge split over who the real victim is in this story. The panel's argument was basically, look, while the chief is over here worried about victim blaming the suspect, he's totally ignoring the people we see as the actual victims, the agents who are in danger and the regular citizens threatened by this kind of gang violence.
Now, to really drive their point home, the commentators didn't just critique the Portland chief in a vacuum. Nope. They put him side by side with another major police leader to create this really sharp contrast and show what they think is the right way to handle things.
And the contrast they drew was, well, it was stark. On one side, you've got the Portland chief, who they paint as emotional and hesitant. And on the other side, they hold up Chicago's superintendent as this model of strong, decisive leadership.
The panel pointed to a statement from Chicago's police superintendent, who they said made it crystal clear. Ramming an officer's vehicle is an act of deadly force, and officers are justified in using deadly force to respond. This was the kind of unambiguous leadership they felt was totally missing in Portland. And this is where the conversation gets a whole lot bigger. The panel uses this one incident in Portland as a launchpad to talk about much broader issues. We're talking gang activity, border security, and what they see as a rising threat against all federal agents.
First off, the panel put a heavy emphasis on the specific gang involved, Tren de Aragua, or TDA. They described it as, quote, one of the worst, which in their view made the chief's hesitation to name them even more irresponsible.
And to back up their claims of this growing danger, the commentators threw out some pretty shocking numbers. Get this, a 1,300% increase in assaults against ICE agents, a 3,200% increase in vehicle attacks, and an 8,000% increase in death threats. For the panel, this painted a picture of just rapidly escalating hostility.
So here's how they connected all the dots. The panel linked the incident in Portland to what they called a tidal wave of unvetted people crossing the border illegally. They claimed the chief practically concealed the gang connection, and that his comments, which were supposed to be sensitive, were actually an insult to the law-abiding Latino community. All right, so what's the panel's final takeaway in all of this? For them, it boiled down to one thing, the powerful message the chief's actions sent to two very different groups of people. And here's how they laid it out. They said the message to criminals was, hey, it's a free-for-all, do whatever you want, this chief will cry for you. But the message to law-abiding citizens? It was, you're on your own, your safety is not the priority. And the panel's final judgment was all summed up in this one cutting line. For them, the chief's emotional response proved he couldn't tell the difference between the bad guys and the good guys, which they see as a fundamental, disqualifying failure for anyone in law enforcement. And that's our breakdown of the commentary. You know, it leaves us with a much bigger question to think about. When a leader shows emotion in a crisis, how does that, or even the lack of it, end up shaping how we, the public, actually view justice and our own safety? Thanks for watching.